Hey everyone, welcome to the Grow Food Essay Project. In this episode we're going to be talking about understanding waterways and kind of water flow movements on your property. So a couple of things that you want to try to keep in mind is that whenever it's raining you want to try to go outside and look where water is moving on the property already, and kind of seeing if there's a boggy area that either water is settling at, or if there's maybe a dry spot where a lot of water is flowing away from. Also look at areas of erosion or things like that where you maybe need to slow water down, so we can have it being soaking into the property. One of the most important things in South Texas is to try to use this rain as best that we can and make sure that it's getting soaked into our clay soils and really hydrating the soil for the garden throughout the year. We want to make sure that we keep as much moisture in the soil as possible. Another way to tell where water has been moving on the property is to look for these almost mini Berm and Swale systems here. So you can see water has been moving across this property like this. What it does is it gets caught here, deposited material like sand and other debris kind of in a little bit of a line here, and there's variations of this line, but you can tell that water is actually flowing down like this. More defined slopes like this will actually lose material from erosion, so water is coming off of here, comes down here, and actually removes soil and exposes the soil. Plants can't root in here. Multiple ways to kind of keep that is plant roots and plant structures and root structures can go in here and hold some of that soil from erosion, but also just laying down a mulch over all of this to cover it up. You can also go on contour and do your berm and swale system. That'd be in contour to the slope. Another indicator of sometimes moisture, high moisture in the soil and stuff like that, is seeing what kind of plants are there. So right here is what's called dollarweed, Pennywort. This is found in areas where there's a lot of moisture, kind of like boggy areas. So this will tell you a lot. We can already see as we walk through here that this is actually boggy. So you can see a lot of moisture from the rain that just happened a couple of days ago, still settling in over here. It's kind of hard to tell, but the grass is actually taller out here and greener out in this spot. So that really can tell us that there's a lot more moisture out in this soil out here. So this can also indicate areas where it's boggy. So, you know, looking where it's really green and seeing if that can kind of tell you anything about, that'd probably be a good spot to plant. You got good moisture in there, grass. Mushrooms in the soil can also be an indicator of moisture. So having mushrooms are really just good in the garden in general, but this can really tell you that there's moisture forming here, and this is right inside the swale system. You can also see where it's pooling up in areas maybe where you don't want it to. So here next to the shed, too close to the shed, we have the lowest point of the property that we've noticed, because this gathers the most water anytime it rains. So knowing that this is the lowest point and that this is the last point of water, you can go uphill and try to build systems like the Berm and Swale system, or you can try to divert where the water is down here through a French drain or any other kind of draining system. But basically maybe try to pull it towards your garden or planting area so that there's more hydration within the ground throughout the season. Leaky pipe can also be used as a potential source to grow plants. One of the first ways to start controlling the water is controlling the water that's on your roof. So impermeable surfaces like roofs or patios and things like that won't be able to hold the water, so they're going to contain an area where there's runoff. Using that runoff to catch in a gutter and then going to a rain tank. There's one option to save water for the seasons where rain isn't growing or isn't pouring, whenever you're trying to grow in the summer. So one thing to kind of look at is whenever you want to store water for a long period of time, you want to make sure that it's sealed from sunlight. So that's something to always kind of keep in. So I'm going to build something around this to protect this plastic here. But you can either sometimes paint, or you can get it wrapped with like a black plastic, 6mm plastic. You can also go and buy large tanks from large tank distributors, and those will usually have a painted pigment that's already in the material there. So we're not going to go into detail about water tanks today. We wanted to just look at that as an option. This is about 1,000-gallon tank. We don't have to go that large, but you can even start with the 55-gallon barrel or a 250-gallon tote. I'm going to take this next piece. So over here is where it puddles up off of the patio here. What we have is the patio drains out to the garden. Whenever there's a heavy rain, you want to try to go outside and start seeing where the water flows. So here's a Berm and Swale system up here on this ridge where the fruit trees are, is elevated, and this is a trench like swale, and that actually holds water here, so we can see that water is settling in here. This is all part of the Berm and Swale system. So right up here, water comes moving down the property. I've noticed from before by watching it that it kind of slowly drains off of the back of the property. So what I've installed here is basically kind of a curb, so it goes down and then it goes up over this. You can plant trees on the berm, and this swale catches the water and absorbs downhill into the berm. But try to notice where water is pooling. You want to make sure that you can see where the water is flowing and how you can use that water. Here's a small Berm and Swale system. Just a small slight bump in here that allows water to stay in this area for the grass. Here you can see a slope from a street where they made, it's called a curb cut. You cut into the curb and you allow the water that would normally continue to be coming down the street here and pass the garden area now to come in and start flowing in, knowing that the water was coming at this angle here. So it flows in. And what you kind of do is like what a rain garden kind of functions as. It goes to a pit area, and this pit was done with rocks, sand and compost mixed together. So we had big excavation work out here done in this earthwork, and we removed the depression out of here and we're able to fill it with sand and compost. And that makes this pit where a lot of this water can come in from the street, absorb, get filtered before it works its way further out into the garden there. You can fill it with different grasses and things like that as it works its way further into the garden area. So the reason why you want to keep in mind where the water is on the property is because you want your garden to be planted close by where there's already water. There's a couple of books to check out called Harvesting Rainwater in the Drylands, I believe, by Brad Lancaster, which is kind of Arizona area based. So I'll pick up techniques from there. But basically, there's a quote in there that says that before you can plant the garden, you need to plant the water. So you need to make sure that water is in that area. One of the most easiest ways is if you got flat property and you didn't notice anything dramatic about where water's at, or you're just starting your garden out for the first time, just make sure you have your garden close by where you have a spigot or a water hose access. That way you can use irrigation later on, and it's not a struggle for you to get water out to your garden bed. So make sure it's close by your house, close by a spigot, somewhere where you can access it easily.